Welcome to A Different Cloth Presents The Capsule. Thank you for tuning in. Just a reminder, this is a spin-off series from the main podcast, which will be back soon. For this collection of The Capsule, we're talking to active designers or people who want to be or were designers at one point in their lives. This is episode number 3. Before we get into the conversation with this episode's guest, remember to like the podcast, subscribe to this podcast, and follow me at Eve Tovah. That's EVETOVAH. Also, make sure to follow my two fellow hosts, Will at will.gambino and Ontario at Ontario_M_Sanders. Also, for all your news related to A Different Cloth and other fashion news, make sure to follow the official ADC podcast on Instagram at differentclothpodcast_. All right. Today, our guest is Luis Ureña. He is a global men's merchandiser for the company Theory. Welcome.
Hi. Thank you for having me.
How are you today? What's going on?
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. It's a rainy, cold Friday today.
You know what? But summer's coming soon. I'm doing great.
Exactly. So tell us about yourself.
All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Luis Ureña. I grew up in Long Island, Dominican. Mm-hmm. Very chill. Went to Brew College here in the city. And I was just, I was originally going to be into politics. Mm-hmm. And that was my realm. That was my strategy in life. My parents trained me for that. And then sophomore year of college, I said, you know what? Fuck it. I want to try fashion.
Yeah.
And I applied to 35 companies, sent out 35 cover letters in my resume, and I only got responses from 4.
Wow.
Yeah, and 3 of those were automated. So I only really got 1, and that was from Ports 1961. I started as an intern, then quickly worked into sales, made a pretty big book, partnered with Isabella Huffington, and worked with Beyonce stylists like Zarina Akers and Colin Carter, who now does Cardi before he did Cardi.
Okay, cool.
And then from there, worked up the ranks and then went into a startup, the Armarium startup, which just closed its doors today, sadly. But I was their first hire, and it was women's luxury rental. So we would rent Ferragamo, Missoni for a quarter of the price and, really get into the luxury rental market, not just rent the runway, but how can we really service the 1% or even the top 15%? Because those are pieces that you don't want to own, you just want to buy. And then quickly after that, after 2.5 years, I left to build my own company, and I did it on the men's side. I started building it. And of course, in the meantime, did odd jobs, got to survive in New York.
That's good.
And ended up working with Banana Republic for a while on building the personal styling program. And then from there, I ended up at the Webster, which is the most, renowned Miami destination, which has expanded all over the country. Carry everything from Dior and exclusives, Chanel, men's for Chanel, which is something different. And then just recently moved into Theory. And for my dream job, really, at least at the moment, it's global men's merchandising. So it's really focusing on the design aspect of it and how to be more efficient on the design and production side. From the business mindset.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So how do you feel? What's your role of making these garments and these pieces happen every year?
Yeah, you know what? I think a lot of it is just love for the industry. I think you guys are in the industry and you guys know there's a saturation of I'm a designer, I'm a stylist, I'm this, I'm that. But through the time, only the real survive.
Yeah.
And I think social media definitely created a hype for that. So I feel, for me, it's about being authentic and being genuine. And you also have to be able to displace yourself, because from the business side, a designer puts their love and effort into a design. The idea is that your design would be the next it thing within the company or the brand. And I feel like you have to support that any way possible, but also be mindful about the business. What sells, what doesn't. You can have a creative side, but you also have to think about what's making money. So for me, it's about checks and balances.
I see. So do you think with yourself and all the other like people that do merchandising, especially in the men department, is it very competitive out there? Do you feel like you're always challenged
Oh, for
in
sure.
the fashion industry?
100%. I think that if you look at the men's division across the board, it's
Yeah.
growing. You know, you could let's talk about like Virgil.
Yeah, definitely.
Virgil and Kim Jones at Dior, like they're doing insane things in their own way, but it's also different. And you look at someone like Ami, who was a designer, and then one day saw his piece at a store and was like, I can't afford that, and I created that piece. So I think for sure, 100%.
That's crazy. That's really cool. Yeah, the men's industry is definitely something I never would be able to wrap my head around that much because it's such a different market out there compared to like women's merchandising.
Yeah, you know, I think that men's in general, men's attitude towards fashion is changing, and I think that's gives us on the business side or on the fashion side a little like where is it going. You have artists that are really pushing the buttons on the fashion side, and you're like, how do I design for that? How do I create for that? And you know, in reality, is that you create what comes out of you, because men are gonna follow. Men are loyal.
Yeah.
That's the difference. Women shop. You have options for so many things. I mean, you work on Canal Street, you have like $5 shops.
Yeah.
Like I wish I had that as a guy.
Yeah.
You know.
I definitely feel like for women, like it's beyond, the sky is not the limit for women at all.
Yeah.
But I feel like men's merchandising, it's like now men are taking more risk day to day, but you still got to keep it kind of bland for them at
100%.
times.
You also have to think about where we are. To talk about location. Location is a bigger thing for men than it is for women. A man down south, I just came back from Dallas, and the fashion down in Dallas, it's pretty amazing in its own essence because it's so different, but it's very different than New York or San Francisco or Miami or LA. So there's no one formula to it. And it's like, how do you balance one collection to be for all these regions?
Yeah, and different climates as well.
Exactly. You know, with global warming happening, winter's changing all around the world. Summer's going to be changing. So it's like, how do you design smarter tech fabrics, being more sustainable, and what does that mean nowadays? Because everyone's throwing sustainability out there in design. Traceable fabrics, can it be traced back to the farm that the fabric was created in, or the factory? And I think that's really important moving forward in the design aspect.
How many locations does Theory have?
Oh my God, they have over 1,100, and they're still opening more. Even in the midst of chaos, there's more to be planned to be open. And before that, I mean, I was at the Webster, and the Webster just opened up LA, and it's an 11,000 square feet location in LA by Beverly Center. And you think about these businesses are still growing. You know, there's so much more to do.
I see. And what locations do you manage for Theory, for like the merchandising?
Yeah, for sure. So for me, I do global.
Yeah.
So I oversee all the performance of Europe, Asia, and Asia's broken up into like Hong Kong, China, Japan, Korea, main doors. That's where they are, and then all of North America.
Wow.
So pretty much most of the continent.
So that's very hard. I would figure like trying to micromanage like all these different locations on how would sell faster here and there, depending on the climate and all of that. Like, what's your thought process when doing all of this? Like, do you have like a strategy, a template?
Well, for me, a lot of it comes, I've been very successful right before my prior role at Armarium, which is a women's startup, was part of the buying and the planning. And women are a bit more fickle when it comes to buying, just because there's so many more options, right? And then you see a growth of sizing. You see a growth of needs for women that's a bit more casual than they used to be.
Yeah.
Now there's more stay-at-home moms. For men's, it changes because there's less, you know, there's not as many stay-at-home dads as many stay-at-home moms are, and that changes their wardrobe in a sense. Like a guy would buy the same sweats and he would wear that throughout everything. A woman, she wants to feel different. So the thought process is really like, how do you have a core business, and then how do you have, you know, fun novelty pieces that are fashion forward that can hit those elevated markets like New York or San Francisco or Japan, like Tokyo or Hong Kong, but then you still have enough of a core that the rest of the world can really understand and resonate with it.
So does the core vary depending on location? Like, say you have more like fun and poppy pieces for New York, and like you have 3, like out of 10 things, you have like 6 fun pieces for New York, but like 4 pieces that are like core and like for every region. Is that how it differs?
Luckily for me, I don't have to deal with the buying much.
Yeah.
We have a whole retail team that does the buying for the retail teams, and we have a
Yeah.
wholesale team that does for the buying for the wholesale. For us, it's really just planning out in regards to the creative director gives an inspiration and the team builds upon it. Now, how can we make that beautiful art story? Because that's what we love about fashion, right? Like you fall in love with fashion because everything has a story. You scenery or anything. So you still have to respect that in a more mass market. I mean, Theory just hit $1 billion mark like a couple of years ago, I believe. So it's really about how do you understand the mass and then create those specialties, and then the buyers within themselves will choose what does that mean. And I think for designers, that is even no matter the spectrum, whether it's your own brand or whether working for a brand, I think how do you stay authentic to yourself?
Yeah.
And I think it shows with many designers. At Theory, I'm lucky enough that there's a true DNA of the brand, and where the designers work, side by side with it, so they're able to change their perspective or work with it, and where it kind of creates a fusion of a beautiful collection. I think that's why Theory has been so successful. But even working at the Webster, you see that throughout every brand, from emerging brand to household name brands. I think that you have to do it. You have to just give a beautiful collection that can cater to everyone.
Yeah.
Because there is a thread that everyone, you go to a city, everyone's wearing a hoodie. Everyone's wearing a t-shirt. Now, how do you make that the coolest shit ever?
Yeah.
Like, like I'm wearing this shirt and I bought it. I'm sorry you guys can't see as an audience, but I'm wearing a Nas and a Wang men's striped, shirt jacket with the hoodie. And I wear it as a shirt, I wear it as a jacket like I am tonight, and just layered. But it's like I can wear it multiple ways. I know if this piece, if I take it to Dallas, everyone's like, yo, what the fuck are you wearing? That's fire.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's important. And where it's like you can take it out of location and context and be like, yo, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
really master the beauty in a piece. So what is the brand's philosophy?
So I think it changes. I mean, in reality, it's about how do you be, for Theory perspectively, it's really how are you in the most minimal way and being, advanced in tech and be ready for everything. How can you go from day to night without having to change so many times? So there's a lot of support within tech. But in general, I do think that a brand, if I can speak to all designers out there, I think it has to be just authentic.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest issue right now across the board. It's like you can't say you're copying. I love Diet Prada.
Yeah.
But there's so much that you can build. We've been around as humans forever. So the fashion has been around just as long. So I think that if you have to think about it too hard, then it may not be authentic to you.
Yeah.
And if you are truly a designer and you love what you want to build, it's about the passion of it. It's about really knowing fabrications and understanding your client. And from those are the two biggest entities. I think that's the basis of any philosophy of a brand.
Okay, that's awesome. That's cool. Like, what is like your like target market identity? Like, what would you describe if I walked in Theory? What is the garments like?
Right. I mean, I think Theory specifically, you'll see that it's very minimal.
Yeah.
You have some pop of color in the right seasons, but it's really kind of foundational tech in any way. In regards to pants, you have advanced, so they won't get, so when it's raining, you won't feel the rain. And it's transitional, so you'll see coats that are layered with vests underneath and where they're a bit more padded. So throughout the winter, you'll be fine. And I think you'll see kind of like that guy that's every day that wants a kind of a uniform. But wants to switch it up too. So if you're going on vacation, you don't want to think about it too much. And I think that's really the basis, and where you can have 10 staples of Theory. Theory is really about kind of my ethos. I believe every person should have a personal ethos. And I don't own, I've worked in luxury I'm 27 since I was 19. I don't own a shitload of luxury pieces. I don't believe in that. I believe in you own staples, highs and lows, commercial like Zara, where it's like really fashion forward. And then you have your Uniqlo pieces, you have your Theory pieces, and where they create your staple. So Theory man that just buys Theory or mostly Theory, It's really about how do I create staples out of this.
Mm-hmm.
And then from
I've
there,
noticed like some of the pieces I did come across from Theory, they're very like favoring the asymmetrical style.
Yeah.
I see like a lot of cotton blends and stuff like that. That's very like avant-garde, kind of like following the Rick Owen like.
Yeah, I mean, I think
look.
overall, what I'm learning also being in the role of Theory is that you don't have the pressure of society as a luxury brand. You have someone like Virgil, and where it's at Vuitton, and you see the pressure. You see Riccardo Tisci at Burberry, the first collection people were wary about, and there's so many eyes. Theory is able to be like the chill, cool, like brother. And where it's like, I'm not about being fashion forward. I'm being about timeless.
Yeah.
I'm about me being comfortable. And I think that's the most important part of Theory production. And where it's like, they've really taken into account the client and the customer and their thought process. If I'm walking and it's just swishy,
Yeah.
Although it's a tech fabric, is that really kind of the theory? Do you really want that?
Yeah.
And these are things that my job really kind of takes full perspective of, because design team may not understand, it's there's design.
Yeah.
It's a really cool fabric. So I think that on our end, we're like, hold on, but let's look at the business side.
Yeah.
And I love that this role exists in a brand that's so big, because I've worked for many brands and the merchandise role is very different. It's really in focus with store, and your time is consumed on store data.
Yeah.
And where at Theory, my role is really thinking about the future. And where you have your hands on the future, the present, and the past, in order to make sure that you're doing good for the future.
Not just that, with like how contemporary Theory could be, you also have to incorporate those trending textiles into your
100%.
pieces every year
100%.
to be on top of the game.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the hard part, right? Because you have global eyes on you now, and you have brands that are from everywhere. You have emerging brands from, it could be from Yugoslavia, from Russia, from, Ghana is emerging right now. In South Africa, I think it's amazing what they're doing.
That's great.
I mean, Dior's women's, Maria Grazia, she basically, in the fall collection, she hired, villages in parts of Ghana, I believe, or Kenya. Sorry, I'm not sure of the exact country in Africa, but she hired these women in villages that were experts. These women that literally just do this every day.
That's amazing.
They hired them for the embroidery of Dior, and I think it's getting to that point all across the board. So you have to be advanced with fabrication, with sustainability in the world, right? You have to be mindful that the world, it's a big industry, so the world needs you.
And you think Theory is a really good sustainable brand compared to others?
Yeah, you know what? Actually, about a month ago, I met an amazing woman named Christina, and she's building Piludora. And it's basically a Farfetch, so it's a marketplace, but only sustainable brands. So she spent 2 years building it. She had over 4,000 brands around the world come to her that quote themselves as sustainable.
Yeah.
Through her process of making sure they're sustainable, whether it was factory videos, conversations, proof of like traceable fabric, she has only solidified out of those 4,000, only 135.
That's great.
So those 135 are now considered like true sustainable brands around the world. Brands that from India and different places that you wouldn't think that they can have a marketplace in New York. She's creating that. So 100%, I think
that's great, because there's a lot of stores out there and brands that say they're sustainable, but when you really look into it, they're not really doing things in the sustainable way.
And I think that's a big conversation. I mean, at Theory, the one thing that I'm appreciating already is the idea of traceable fabric.
Yeah.
Can you really trace it back to the factory and the farm? You have companies like Xenia that vertically integrated, meaning that they bought the sheeps that they produce for their cashmere or their wool or whatever it may be. They bought that. So now they control everything, all their costs, which is really important. They control that from beginning to end.
Yeah.
So I think Theory is just in line, and for us, it's a big it's a big push forward, you know?
That's good because it also creates transparency between you and the customer, because the customer wants to support a sustainable company. And the fact that you actually keep your word and you're truly sustainable keeps the integrity of your customer in the long run.
Yeah, I think customers are about loyalty, right?
Yeah.
And I think that customers buy, look at Glossier. I mean,
Yeah.
it's makeup, but I went to a panel on Instagram by Eva Chen, who
Yeah.
oversees their fashion partnerships, and her, this is 2017, 2018, and her number one Instagram page in the fashion beauty space was Glossier.
Yeah.
And you walk into their retail space and you feel that it's one.
Yeah.
And I think that's so important. You have to understand as a client or a customer, depending the phrasing that you want to use, where is it coming from? You can't think about, I have to recycle the cup that I'm drinking from.
Yeah.
And the clothes that I have and I'm trying to do spring cleaning, I'm going to donate it. Where does that really go? Curveball here, but Southeast Asia has been buying a lot of recyclables from the country, from the United States. And a lot of that's fabric. And they thought they could be sustainable and like reprocess it in different ways.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, they just have mountains of clothes and trash in their countries that's polluting into the water. So I think it starts from there. As a customer, you have to know.
Yeah, you have to
Where
really
is it coming
know
from?
where your money is going also, because you're also paying a lot of money for these brands, and they're saying one thing and you're believing it, but then they're not doing what you truly believe,
Yeah.
which also in the long run, it creates a bad reputation for your brand.
100%. And I think that, I've been lucky enough to work with brands that have taught me, right? Because I feel like we're always learning.
Yeah.
Even one day, if we all have kids, like we'll be learning until the day we, aren't on this earth anymore. So I do believe that like it's about learning and it's about having the right mentors and the right bosses to teach you the right way.
Yeah.
So I've been very grateful and very lucky to just be in the right companies at the right time. But yeah.
That's great. Well, that brings me to the question, what's your sourcing process?
So we have on the design side, there is someone that focuses on fabric sourcing.
Okay.
And they, and then there's creative directors and they source too. And then our chief brand officer also sources. I've learned that in every company is a little bit different. Some companies have someone that's literally just sourcing on fabric. Fabric we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Okay. That it just focuses on sourcing the fabric. Then other brands, you have someone like the creative director that thinks about the idea, that may throw, I went to Positano this summer and I had a beautiful idea of the sunset and all the homes that you see off the side. I thought about this fabric and that fabric. So it changes by brand that I've been with. But I think the most effective way is to have someone that really focuses on sourcing fabric. I think that really helps. I have someone now where I can go to this person and they know everything. They know how it's going to dye in different fabrics and colors. Like if I want a teal, how is that going to look like in this fabric and that fabric and that fabric? And they also know the differences of factories, which is super important. You can build a collection round one, but once you start scaling and selling out, how do you scale that production? And that's where factories come into play.
I understand that. That's awesome. Do you know where you guys source the fabric?
I personally don't. I just know they're local mills, whether in Japan or Italy.
All right. Okay, cool.
I know for some of our knits we're doing Peru, which is really cool for me as being Dominican, knowing that you're really sourcing into Latin America and working with factories that are known to the truth of their country origin, like Peru wool. It makes sense,
All right, awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. Are there any important challenges or failures that you've faced as a merchandiser?
I think for me as a role, it's a new role, so I can't speak too much of that. But I can think in the industry, I think it's a balance. It's balancing it all, right? How are you can coin yourself as a creative. I owned a startup company at one point. I also have been silently working on my own collection for years. It's like, how do you balance that with the business needs? You see on Instagram and different accounts, celebrities wearing different brands. You're like, who is that? Like, how can I do that? So I think a lot of it's just going.
Yeah.
And my challenges, it's about balancing the business and the design aspect. When I was at a startup, it's like, how do you, as a creative and building a startup, how do you talk to a CEO that's been in the business for 20 years? And that's what they know.
Yeah.
That's all they know. That brand is all they know. So how do you come as a 20-year-old and say, hey, I have a new idea for you? So I think a lot of it is just being, standing firm and being a chameleon. So because I've been through challenges and where I've lost, I'm not going to disclose the company's name, but I've lost like $35,000 within a contractual agreement.
Yeah.
And that was like, I felt the worst day of my life at that moment. But it's part of the business. It's part of negotiations and you learning and you really understanding the design side to the business side. You can't just know one facet. That's why a lot of designers, I believe, go to Parsons or FIT and they really build their repertoire and they're amazing.
Yeah.
If you see these collections, MFA, they're amazing collections, but they just don't understand the design aspect.
Yeah.
So they'd rather go work for themselves than work for a brand and learn the ropes.
Yeah.
So once they get started, first couple collections, great.
Yeah.
But then what are you going to end up doing? Bartending the rest of your life, trying to really squeeze out pennies for every collection? And I've worked with designers like that here in New York, and it's a struggle.
Yeah.
So I think if you're going to immerse into an industry like fashion, you have to understand that this is not a 4-year, all of a sudden I want to be famous.
Yeah.
It's going to be a lifetime goal, like a professor, like a politician, or like any other career. It's not overnight. It's a lot of work, and you're going to go through so many failures in order for you to just get that one opportunity.
But there is like a certain regimen or protocol you have to meet once a year to show that you're actually progressing as a merchandiser.
For sure. For me, specifically for my role, it's numbers. It's really, I oversee categories.
Yeah.
I oversee every category but 2 in the entire company for men's, and it's about performance. It's like, did my decision on the trim on this, did I say yes with the design team when I should have said no to a certain thing because the business said so? And that's really how I evaluate it.
So it's just like what you feel will work out, because obviously if you have a feeling that may be good, someone will say, no, I think it's going to fail. But it's up to you at the end of the day to make that decision.
It's up to my bosses, but at the end of the day, I think it really is about being knowledgeable about the industry. Like, I'm supposed to know what Vetements does, what Dior does, what Off-White does, what Palm Angel's done, and they're all different categories. But I'm also supposed to understand what's going on at Zara.
Yeah.
And how does that change by region? How does that change by Uniqlo? And I think it's about being a resource and a dictionary, really, of fashion. Being able to use context, because a lot of it's not rocket science. You have planners, you have people that do more of the data part. Yes, you have to work on data. You have to understand the business. But in reality, is like, hey, I'm kind of an expert in this realm. I think this would be the trend for the future based on this data behind me. Yeah. And that's how.
So once you bring the information, they'll be like, okay, then I have to believe you because you brought the information.
100%, because if not, then you have 300 chiefs in one room with all an idea. And sometimes it is taking a gamble. Yeah. But it has to be the most strategic, safest gamble that you take. Yeah. Because so it's never a risk ever. I'm sure there have been moments in where there are truly risk, and where is that really the brand's ethos? I mean, you see every collection from every designer, you're like, that's a little off. Yeah. Why do they do that? And sometimes people that don't understand the production behind a runway are like Simone Rocha, who I love with women's wear, who's more avant-garde, very artistic, very comme des garçons in its own essence. You're like, it's a big dress and a floofy thing and then da-da-da-da, what does that sense make? But when you start breaking it down, you now start seeing piece by piece and the beauty of the art in each piece. And then from there, you can build up from there. So I think it's about balancing it all, but still being true to the creative aspect, because clients are coming for that. For me right now at Theory, I am maybe 100th merchandiser in for men's in a global aspect. What makes me different? Yeah. And for me, it's about respecting the design quality, because those are beautiful moments. You can't just, it's like, in the fashion industry, like models. You do e-com, you take a picture of a model, you're like, oh, we have to Photoshop this. Her thigh looks a little too big. This looks a little to that. It's the same thing with the design side of clothing. You have to respect that model, for example, on that model has been working out every day, watches what she eats or he eats, and make sure that they stay within a certain, weight or look, the hair is a certain way. Same thing with designers. They really try to take into consideration the ethos of the brand while putting in their own flair and their own twist. So you have to respect their work in any way possible.
I get that.
Yeah.
I get that. Do you get to travel a lot with this job to really experience like inspiration?
So
that you
with
put to
this
display?
specific job, I haven't traveled yet. I think coronavirus is a big deal to that, which is fine for me because I'm still settling into the role.
Yeah.
When I was at Armarium, I traveled quite a bit. I did about 28 pop-ups in the 2.5 years that I was there building the brand. And that went from Hamptons in the summer, Nashville in April, Miami for Art Basel in December, and award season was in LA in February while you were doing market and going to runways. So yeah, I was able to travel a lot within my career of fashion.
That's really cool. Yeah, I feel like definitely traveling and experience a lot helps put in some factors into the merchandising process.
For sure, I think because if you think about it, we're in New York.
Yeah.
If we're lucky, we get to leave New York. Some New Yorkers love New York so much they don't leave New York. And I think in fashion that happens a lot more. People in fashion aren't rich.
Yeah.
You have to really do it for the passion.
Yeah.
Those millionaires that you see, they're really one of a million and pushing forward. So when you look at us that are pushing the industry forward to the next level, you really do have to travel because it's not just designs that are different.
Yeah.
It's also just business models and holidays. There's holidays in Georgia
Yeah.
that they celebrate religion-wise too. I went to Dallas, and every religion is in Dallas in different ways.
Yeah.
So there's not one central focus of you have to wear white on Sundays kind of thing, where you would do in the Baptist church down south.
So you could know about that knowledge and incorporate it to theory.
100%. You have to do that in a design aspect. I think it's outside of theory. In every brand, you really have to understand, one, what you're producing, but also who you're producing it for. Your client's not just an age group.
Yeah.
Your client's not just, what are they, you can say, where are they going with that? Oh, they're going out. Okay, that's cool, but where are they going out?
Yeah, and it's like
Nashville, or are they going out here?
Definitely, and like their ceremonial outfits too, what they wear for a living.
Exactly.
You always have to adapt to like how they
seasons.
situate.
There's wedding seasons. We all know the beginning of fall is the hype of wedding season.
Yes.
The beginning of spring is the hype of wedding season.
Yes.
You won't really have a wedding between like January 2nd and like March 15th. So that's really when you get to bulk up.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
Definitely. How would you measure the brand's success, and how do you rate your brand's current success?
I'll speak to different broad terms. I mean, theory, I just recently started. So because it just hit the $1 billion mark, in the last couple of years, I really can't. They're like a unicorn in the startup world. You think of anything that hits $1 billion as a unicorn. I think in the past, I was at Ports 1961, which if you think about a very interesting background, Ports started in Canada and was purchased by the 10th richest man in China. And headquarters was based in New York and then migrated to Italy. And then you have a designer based in Miami and a women's designer based in London. So if you look at the disparity, you're like, what's going on, Sorry, what was the original question? Just to make sure
The original question was, how would you measure the brand's success?
Perfect. Okay, I was on the right track. I wanted to make
No
sure.
No worries.
So with Ports, the success was a failure in the U.S. market, and at least in the flagship in New York.
Yeah.
There was a flagship. They wanted to run men's, women's, Asia, Europe, North America the same way, flagships and outlets, and it didn't work out that way because you can't. Those markets are very different. And sadly, they converted the very high-performing women's flagship store in New York to a men's-only store. So at that point, those are really poor business decisions that led to the failure of Ports in New York. Then you look at someone like the Webster, which is a concept store, not one design, a brand, a mono brand, and where they just opened up LA. So they really focused on the scaling of it all.
Yeah.
And that's successful. You look at someone like Banana Republic and where they did a stint there. I mean, yes, Gap Inc. as a whole is going through its things, but if you could just stand at Banana during peak hour, lunchtime, and you watch the registers, you're like, how the fuck do these people come every day?
Literally.
There's people that come every day and shop.
They're loyal customers.
They're super loyal, and they're in the building. And you look at, in the business side, you're like, oh, the business is failing.
Yeah.
But you look at a store, and every hour you're making thousands and thousands of dollars. And you have managers that are pushing on the floor. You have teams that are excited about certain products. That's success to me, and where the customer can really relate that they need to come back.
Yeah. That's amazing. What is like the history of Theory though? Because I never really found out about the brand until like 2 years ago. Like, how did it really start?
So the pioneer of it all was really Andrew Rosen, in which I've had the pleasure of meeting Andrew a couple times. And I think that it's pretty amazing. I mean, it was founded in 1997 here in New York. So it was a true, authentic New York brand. And I think that's really important. You don't think about, if you go around the world and you see a Theory store, it's like seeing a Shake Shack.
Wow, I see.
It's kind of like the epitome of like Shake Shack was built in New York. You're like, that's a New York brand.
Yeah.
For being the capital of the world and at one point fashion. Theory also, the company within itself also bought Helmut Lang. And Helmut Lang, I don't know if you know this, but Helmut Lang is the reason why New York Fashion Week is the first.
Really?
Out of all the fashion cadence. Yeah. So
that's crazy.
I don't remember if it was spring or fall of 1993. Helmut said, fuck this shit about New York being last. 'Cause New York was last. They were after Paris, but he didn't feel like he was getting the best orders. I'm going to do it before London, before Milan, before anything. And he started the New York trend in 83. And that's why New York is before everyone else. So for Theory to acquire that at a very, 8 years ago, that really kind of shows you where Theory wants to go. So the Theory is very New York focused. Theory is very New York driven. But Theory also understands that a little bit of New York can go into everyone's homes around the world.
Yeah.
And I think that started with the pants, and then they went really focused on suiting to lifestyle. And now it's really just finding like, what does that man or that girl really want every season?
Yeah.
Because they're not leaving us. They're coming back for more. It's our job to really give them more,
Yeah, that's awesome. What do you think Theory is going to divert to in the future? Like, what do you see the future being for Theory?
I mean, I can't speak of it because the CEO has that strategy behind it, and Dinesh is insanely amazing. But I do see it growing, right? I think Theory has been very consistent. I think Theory is very well placed in the industry. For, the youngcomers that doesn't spend in luxury, that is their luxury price point. Theory could be luxury because it works everywhere.
Yeah.
And it's functional and it's durable. That's what really kind of think for our generation that grew up buying H&M, Zara, Forever 21. That is an aspirational brand because it's not a Gucci and it's not a Vuitton price point. It's a very reasonable price point.
It's still achievable, but you still look sleek,
It's
clean,
scalable, and where that's
official.
the next step. And then, you know what? After that, when you can easily buy Vuitton or Birkin, you never know. Theory will always be your basics. So I think Theory placement-wise is really important, and I think that's why when I was asked for the role and we spoke about it all, like it just made sense for me because there's so much opportunity. You have the aspirational market of the younger millennial and Gen Z, but then you also have the basics market. You're in every big door, Nordstrom, Bloomingdale's, like you're in there in Saks. People are buying your stuff. So it's like whether, depending on the leadership, do you scale it and enter into luxury, or do you really empower and stay there? And how do you do that in a modern way that no one else is doing it? And I think that's really important for us.
Oh, that's awesome. So as a merchandiser, do you have any helpful tips or hacks for people that are in merchandising or studying merchandising that would help them in the merchandising industry?
Sure. I think every brand is a little different, which is what I'm learning. Some brands, as a merchandiser, you'll be very hand-focused, heavy-handed and very focused on retail stores, and you have that communication with them. In other brands, like where I'm at now, it's really focused on strategy and moving the business forward. I think overall, one thing you cannot forget about in the industry, I'll say for merchandising, but the industry in general, is that the most important factor in the entire business model that you may have is the customer. Without the customer, obviously, yeah, without the designs, you won't have a customer. It's a chicken and egg thing.
Yeah.
But that's where you're making your money.
Yeah.
When you are hiring people, that's what it is. So I think Theory has a great concept of that and where they're thinking about the future and how to move it forward. And I think that for a merchandising role, you just have to understand design and the business side. You cannot think that H&M or Zara is like, oof, it's all a business. Those are incredible businesses that have scaled insanely.
Yeah.
You know, that really, if you
It's like
look
they
at,
are a tool that you need to look and pay
Oh my God,
attention
for
to how they
sure.
win the market.
Yes, I mean, look at, if you go to Zara,
Yeah.
Zara.com or whatever their .us or whatever
Yeah.
it is, if you filter by country,
Yeah.
and obviously, I mean, I leave it in English because I can only speak Spanish. I can't speak any other language. You see how they merchandise so different, how they style e-com differently, how they do everything differently. You know, Trina Turk and Tory Burch have been pioneers of that for a while. People haven't really seen you talk about them, but those brands have really thought about, if you're in Brazil, make it sexier. If you're in India or in the Middle East, cover it up a little bit more. And they really think about the core design and then how can they make tweaks of it depending on the location of it.
Yeah.
So I
That's
think
crazy.
that's really important.
It is important. It could be overwhelming though, because you're dealing with such a big continent, geographic.
Yeah.
So it's definitely, you really have to analyze and study what you're doing.
Yeah, I think also just understanding is patience, right? Like it's really understanding that you can't understand it all at one shot. So you have to focus on one, understand it to where you feel comfortable enough speaking about it and moving on. And then from there, you'll start seeing seeing threads that connect them all. Every region, every country will have similar things. Obviously, in Asia, you'll have smaller sizes.
Yeah.
A lot of, cutting very small. In America, we have larger sizing, so our sizing scale is a little bit different. Not for Theory specifically, but in general in fashion. You know, I'm a small in America.
Yeah.
But I'm a medium in Europe. It's just what it is.
So do you guys have like a selection of fit models that you have to use to size your garments according to like...
Yeah, actually today I just found out the true sample size for men's in Theory, which I was astonishingly and proud of. So in most of the industry throughout luxury or most things, your sample size for men's, let's say, is a small or extra small. And where your waist, for pant size is around a 28 or a 30, waist. For Theory, it's 32.
Okay.
So it's more on the medium, and the medium is the base.
I
It's not a
see.
small, it's not an extra small, it's a medium. And I think that gives it more of a conceptual understanding of the man's body.
Yeah.
Because we all put on weight differently. We all understand, visually we understand things differently, but when you see something in a medium size, it's not what you see in stores of like luxury stores. If you look at like a Dover Street, they may have one item out of something, but it's usually the smallest size. Theory is basing their production on a medium.
So their garments doesn't look unapproachable.
Exactly. It doesn't look like it's too small for you.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of amazing for me because my entire fashion career, sample size has always been a 48 for men's, which is about a 30. If you can't fit into it, we have to discuss.
So does Theory have like a broad range of sizes? Like, do they cater to bigger sizes out there?
Yeah, for men it goes to double extra small to 2XL depending on the thing, right? They're really smart about what they cut. They're not just cutting fabric to cut it. They're thinking about, can a man that's 2XL really wear this, and can we buy it deep? Because you can't just build it for one guy. As a big brand like that, you really have to think about sizing in the right way. So there are items that are 2XL, and you see a lot of that, 3XL. But there are some items, like, if it's a little sheer, you have to be mindful, like, does that 3XL guy really want to buy it? Are there 1,000 of those guys that want to wear that?
Yeah, because it's also a lot of fabric you have to put into it.
Yeah, and luckily, an amazing thing about Theory, and I'll speak in general terms, but since you asked about Theory. Theory not only has a corporate office in New York, they also have a design building.
Okay.
And where they create samples there. There's a whole design team for men's and women's on different floors that literally focus on building the next collection over and over again, which I think is insanely amazing because you don't have a creative director traveling and trying to figure out his next idea. You really have a team there looking at fabrication, looking at dyeing, lab dyeing. Like lab dyeing is cool because you get to see how does this color dye in all these fabrics.
Yeah.
And how do we change it? Is it tech, like how can we make it like tech smart? How can we make it sustainable? It really is amazing what they have there.
That's really,
we have there now.
that's awesome. That's really good. I'm glad that you guys also that cater to a lot of brands because there is a lot of like nice companies out there that only like cater to like smaller body types, which we're moving in like a era of like, everyone deserves to look fashionable and sleek and like awesome on the runway,
That is
in general.
Big, one of my biggest pet peeves with the industry.
Yeah.
Is sizing
Yeah.
inclusivity. And I think you see that changing a little bit now.
Yeah.
And I think that also gave the rental and resale shared economy space an opportunity.
Yeah.
I had clients, women, that would come to me and say, in Rome, they don't sell past a 44, which is technically the same as a US 8.
Wow. I see.
The average size in US is a 14.
That's because they don't really cater to other countries. They just look at their own domain.
I would beg to differ. I think they do have global doors like Gucci or whatever. I don't know what the standard is now in Rome.
Yeah.
But I think that overall in the marketplace, in the global marketplace, you have to think about who are the buyers for these stores. They're a size 2, size 4. You also have to think about diversity. I'm Dominican. A Dominican woman is built different than an Asian woman.
Yeah.
A black man is built different than an Asian man.
Yeah.
In many ways. Same thing as a Dominican man, or in many ways, depending where you grow up or your.
And a size large in this country is different from a size large in a different country.
And at the Webster, I must say, at the Webster, what I found astonishing was a lot of the Gen Z.
Yeah.
Born 2000 and over, they bought extra large as being extra small. It's like their size in a fitted way would be an extra small. Like they should have bought an extra small, but they would buy an extra large because that's what's cool. So when a guy that came in that was an extra large, there was no more availability for him because everyone that was a small bought that. And that's really kind of, that's a trend. That's a fad. You look at Vetements, you look at Balenciaga, you look at, Yeezy. It's all about the oversizedness of it all. And where that changes the perception of buying. So now this idea of buying extra small and small
is gone.
It's gone.
People always want, but that is an insane mentality to think about because it's like now you have to actually cater more bigger sizes, not just for people that have a bigger size, but just support the look. Exactly.
Exactly. And I think that's where it's challenging, right?
Because even me, like I'm wearing a large hoodie right now and I wear a small.
Yeah, you're tiny.
Like literally, it's crazy.
But I think that's really the beauty of we're going through a gray area, not just around the world and the economy, but fashion is a great reflection of the economy.
Yeah.
When I was in high school and I took fashion merchandising class, I remember them telling me, if the collections are bright, that means the economy is great.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, in New York, we always wear black and navy and gray, so that doesn't really reflect the economy in New York. But overall, I do believe that, it's a 360.
Yeah.
The industry is a 360, and you can't cut corners in any way.
I see. So I guess since we're on the topic and it's in the air or whatever, do you think this whole coronavirus is affecting Theory at all?
I think in large aspect it's affecting the entire world.
Yeah.
You see markets. Google and Meatpacking just closed down their offices today.
Yeah.
Everyone, around the city, their offices are on limit days. You can have 2 days off because of the coronavirus.
Yeah.
You see markets like Hong Kong. The Chinese dollar was so strong, and you saw it scaling. There was so much power there on the business side. And then on the fashion side too, you have brands, Valentino, you have Prada, you have all these brands creating Fashion Week specialized
And
for Hong Kong.
depend on China.
Exactly.
Like,
And you
very
have-
much.
Exactly. Factories and also money.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of money in China. You have a big population there, and now you're at a halt.
Yeah.
That's the global economy halt. I just read an article on business to fashion, which I'm a big fashion nerd. The Armani show I just read. Giorgio Armani's, still the creative helm of his brand. He wanted to have the show. Although people were like, no, don't do it because of Corona. He was like, fuck this shit. Like,
Yeah. Like, I want to do my show.
Exactly. But in reality, he ended up having an empty show.
Wow.
There were
Because
just the models walking through the
that's
show.
crazy.
And in theory, there's a lot more FaceTimes now. There's less people traveling.
Yeah.
And I think that's an effect not just at theory, but across the board.
Yeah.
I think people are being more cautious. But I just funnily read on Instagram that every year since Y2K 99, we've had something. The Ebola virus, the swine flu.
Yeah.
And I was like, I forgot all about these.
Yeah, they all happen. So
Yeah.
I'm just like.
So I mean, it's about being, in general, just being about, being having sanitation.
Yeah.
Like on the train, there's people eating and touching the rail.
Yeah.
Like, don't touch your face while you're eating and touching the rail. That's
Yeah.
a lot going on in one shot. But in the fashion industry, I do feel that you do see a hit.
Yeah.
In a macro way.
Do you think it will slow down the process like dramatically where you lose sale or money? Or do you think you guys will make a comeback and you still won't be that held back from this whole thing?
I think luckily in fashion, it's really, the fashion business is it's very much like the stock market in many ways. So let's say globally, the entire industry is at a down right now.
Yeah.
Coronavirus is gone. Great. Let's say there's a holiday. That shoots everything back up.
Yeah.
So I think it's really, it's always depends. You can have a plan for anything, but just like your regular life,
Yeah.
like life hits you.
Because spring is around the corner. Like Easter is coming. All these things are coming, and people will need outfits to wear.
And traveling too. I think if you're a teacher, you're traveling a lot more. If you're in education, if you are in corporate role, no matter where, you have summer Fridays now. We'll be hitting on a couple months, and what that means is like you just can do weekend getaways now.
Yeah.
In New York, like in many other places, rooftops and going out. If you have a uniform, that's great for winter, but for summer, you probably want to show a little bit of color.
Yeah.
And I think that there'll be a moment of awakening for the economy and fashion. I think that just like in every other decade, this is just one of our hits.
Yeah.
And the strongest will survive. Unfortunately, in fashion, like any other industry, is very much survival of the fittest.
Yeah.
And in our industry right now, there is a saturation of people and talent. And where you could be in New York, in Brooklyn, and you can see work of someone in like Vietnam or whatever it is, in Spain, and you can buy that now. So I think that's just creating even more of an anxiety level for us. But in reality, we've always had economic stressors around.
Yeah.
I think truly what stays fine are the brands, and bringing it back to the design aspect, that are just truly organic to your brand. And just also be mindful of the cost.
Yeah.
You can produce, but if it's too expensive, then you really aren't producing much for yourself. You're producing more for an art.
I see.
You know?
Do you see yourself as a merchandiser within like the next 5-6 years? Do you want to like evolve to some other position?
Honestly, I don't know what life has to bring for me. I've been very grateful, and just, I went from working at a startup, building my own startup, to consulting a supermarket, to working at Banana, to building, it's just been so crazy. I do see myself focusing on this role for the next 5 years because there's so much to learn.
Yeah.
And I think that I'm lucky enough to be at a company where it's so advanced and pushing it forward, and where my role is about the future.
Yeah.
It's not so much about the now, it's about working with the now and the future and the past simultaneously. So I want to learn more. I'm hungry. I need to understand it better.
Yeah.
And then within 5 years, maybe 6 years, I would really understand all facets of the company. And where from there, you never know what could happen.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's great.
Because the owner of Armar, I'm going through my resume now.
No, that's fine.
The owner of the Webster, Laura, she comes from the Remy Martin LaCour family, but she was actually a merchandiser for many years. So to know that she has created a brand, a concept store that, globally people come every single market to come see, it becomes like, a point of talking in New York Times or whatever. To know that comes from a merchandiser, where the old-fashioned world would be like only, wholesalers.
Yeah.
Or, salespeople and the VP of sales would really be able to take that catapult or whatever it may be. Now it's changing. Now you have this whole new role as a merchandiser. You're really working on growth hacking.
Yeah.
How can I hack growth within a company?
Yeah.
Every single season.
I know Zara does that. They hack growth all the time. Once you see it on the runway, the next day it's in online on the
That's a
store.
monster. I mean, I had a mentor of mine through the years say that anyone that comes from Zara in regards to operations can deserve a job anywhere, just because of the capacity that they work at.
Yeah.
And just the logistics. Like, I know from a designer that I met, like, they have iPads and they can design around the world, send it to the factory, produce it in a couple of weeks, and bam, it's in the store. It's crazy.
Wow.
It is a monster.
That's awesome. But you're learning, and hey,
Oh,
you might become that monster. Roar. Oh my gosh, that's insane. If you could give them one piece of advice for someone that wants to go into design or who's an emerging designer, what would you say?
I would say do your research and not rush it, and really investigate who you are as a designer. I think that most people that claim designer titles, they have really good ideas. But someone that comes from idea-centric, I love ideas, maybe you've seen your previous designs in actual stores. You're like, wait, I thought about that. Wait, why is that there? Because I thought about that before. I should have acted upon it. And a lot of it is acting, but it's you being influenced around the stratosphere of things, right? The way Spotify tells you what to listen to, Netflix tells you what to watch in its own essence. But I think with design, it's very similar. You shop in the same places. It tells you what you like. So I think doing your research, traveling, going to museums, touching different fabrics, trying different things on. I think that's so key, because you don't have to sit there and look at Vogue Runway or look at the runways or YouTube nonstop. It does nothing for you.
You have the whole world to be inspired.
I mean, for me, I'm a tactical person. I'm a visual person. I have to touch and feel and understand it, piece it together. And what I've realized is that true creatives, it's really hard to get them analytical and the business side, because they're so in the thought process of building what they have to build and in their craft. And I think that is so important. But also, while you're doing that, obviously that you have to add more. It's fashion. You have to be mindful of your numbers.
Yeah.
You have to be mindful of the business side. And if you're not good at the business side, find someone that is.
Yeah.
Find someone that can give you feedback and you won't take it as insult.
Yeah.
Because a lot of it's egos, and you have to have, like, my parents always, my mom, my dad always raised me as, don't take business personal and don't take personal business. Meaning, like, if I'm in a conference room or if I'm in a studio, in a design studio, I can't take your constructive criticism or feedback in a personal way.
Yeah.
It is for the business.
Yeah, it's to better you for the future.
It's for the business. It's different if you call me fat.
Yeah.
You call me ugly. Like, we're going to have a problem.
Yeah, you're going to throw some hands.
Like, shit happens, but, like, when it comes to the business, you could have no emotion towards it because it is its own entity.
Yeah.
And when you have a lot of egos and you have a lot of experts in different realms, things can get, gray.
Yeah.
And what I'm learning is that from the beginning, you set up that structure and where it's in a democratic way and balance. If you're not that kind of designer, you want all control, fuck it. You get all control.
Yeah.
That is your say, like Armani, his age and still going. Or a Ralph, But if you're open to what is the purpose of your brand? Is it for you to grow it and you become famous? Because is that what you want? Or do you just want to build a brand just to build a brand about your love for it?
Yeah.
Or do you want to scale it and one day sell it? You know, is that really your goal? So I think it really identifying, one, who you are as a designer, what you mean about, not just your clothes, but the music you listen to, the feeling, the confidence that your clients are going to get when they put it on. Like you know, when you get a fresh haircut or a cut, you know, or a new whatever it is, you wear that in your confidence. You walk down the street with that confidence.
I feel that energy.
And that has to be in the piece that you design. You have to feel that way, yo, I designed this shit. I'm about this brand. This is the music you're going to listen to. This is a smell you're going to smell while you're in my place. This is what you're going to drink when you're in my studio. That's when I think it's missing. That's what you need as a designer.
Well, thank you, Luis. It was great having you on this podcast. Would you mind letting us know your handle?
Sure. I'm not Insta famous, which, you know, is cool. But I'm at Café con Luis. So think about Café con Leche, but Café con Luis on Instagram. And through the works, I will be developing more content. One thing with this new rollout theory is really looking at the future. And I also think that there's not enough people of color in leadership roles at bigger brands. And I've met people that are of color in those roles, and they don't really let people in. If you look at merchandising on YouTube or on anything, you have no idea what that means. You think it's visual merchandising. So that will be being built through the season.
All right.
You know?
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Bye-bye.
Bye.